It's a reaction to the hit and the fallout that comes with it. Doug Peterson looking a little funny in the light. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen wherever you listen or watch Locked On Jaguars. We appreciate you doing that. As always, thank you and shout out to the everydayers who watch and listen to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Here's what we're going to run down today. At the end of the show, by the end of the show, we'll answer the question, should Trevor Lawrence be shut down, receiving a concussion protocol game-ending hit yesterday and scared the life out of people. Now that they're mathematically eliminated, we'll talk about what the team should do. The difference in messaging between the aftermath of the brawl, how Doug Peterson spoke about his player versus how DeMeco Ryans spoke about his. And let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired. We'll start out talking about the fallout from the hit. Obviously, the biggest story is Trevor Lawrence being banged up in a game where you expected to see a duel breakout between him and C.J. Stroud in a Jaguars and Texans game that has some playoff ramifications for both teams. It never really materialized because Trevor Lawrence was injured while the game was still basically trying to get started and ebb and flow and unfold. So he got hit. Aziz Shahir, the player who hit him from the Texans, has put out an apology for it, saying that's not what his intention was. And there are people putting videos out of him doing this stuff before. At this point, intent doesn't matter. And that's what I'll get into when I talk about the fallout. Even in his apology, Aziz Shahir, I hope I'm saying his name right, Aziz Shahir, he said he understands why the Jaguars teammates, why the Jags guys went after him. Totally understand it. And even in watching it, while I disagree with guys on my own network like Big Sarge, I did think that the hit was dirty. It doesn't mean that it was dirty because the guy has some sort of malcontent. It's just some guys are just wired like that, and you always got to pull them back a little bit. But at this point, it doesn't matter. I think it was a dirty hit, and everyone who is wherever they are, whatever perspective they come from, they have to respond to that perspective. And that gets me to Doug Peterson. Everybody understands. Like, I understood when the Texans teammates who probably knew he was wrong said, okay, he's wrong, but why y'all ain't going to beat him up in here? We ain't going to just let y'all hang him. You know what I'm saying? I remember on the old Tombstone and Cowboy movies? Yeah, but no, we ain't letting him out. He's going to see a fair trial. You know, even if they didn't mean it. The thing is everyone has a place. Doug Peterson's place should be protecting his quarterback and understanding his players. I've watched and been around and even played way back in the day where you would hear coaches say stuff like, I'm going to admonish you, but I ain't mad at you. There's some things like that you get penalties for where a coach probably ain't mad. There's some reactions that you have as a player. I'm sure your coach probably going to tell you probably shouldn't do it, but he kind of understands. It's almost like the way I grew up. If there was more than one of y'all and one of y'all came home with a black eye and your parent looked at the other person and said, well, what were you doing? Well, I was watching them fight. Well, see, where I come from, that means you're going to get a black eye in the house because ain't no way I'm watching nobody that lives in my house get whooped like that and I don't do nothing about it. Everybody talking about fair. Yeah, at some point when you realize it's over, it's over. You got to split that thing up. All right, that's enough, but we ain't going to let you drag my guy, right? I think fans just really wanted to see and hear Mr. Nice Guy Doug go away. They didn't want Mr. Rogers. No, they didn't want Mr. Rogers. They wanted their dad to look kind of like Goldberg or the person that's supposed to advocate for you. Yeah, I want to look like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't want Mr. Rogers. I'm sorry. You can be Mr. Rogers, and we all know about turning that thing on and off. Where's the passion to talk more in the post game press conference about glossing over just D'Amico Ryans, right? Just swinging like Tarzan, man. And I'm sitting there like, I'd like D'Amico too, but it ain't time for all of that. It's almost like Doug was auditioning for an offensive coordinator job from D'Amico next year. At some point, what about your quarterback down there with his arms stiff? If that pissed everybody else in Teal off, why didn't it piss you off? I have never, ever, ever said anything about the character of Doug Peterson. I ain't going to start now. I don't know. Maybe he's always been measured like that throughout his career. When something like that happened to somebody on his team, and it's just not in his personality to go after the other people. Maybe that's just who he is. And I'm willing to believe that because I've been around him enough. I'm willing to believe that it's not that he didn't care about Trevor. I'm willing to believe that he didn't, while he does understand that he thinks it's necessary in this situation to be Mr. Rogers type and tell Jari and Jones, yeah, man, you can't do that. We have to respond a certain way, which he's right. He's not wrong, okay? But you know what? I don't need you telling the public, and this goes back to saying too much to us. Tell him that in private, but then at least come out here in front of us and say, if you saw that happen to your teammate, what would your reaction be? And while I understand that there's a fine that's going to come, you don't condone it, but you understand it because you've been there as a player. At least show some form of compassion for your guy that was just laying on the ground, man. If the fans needed a reason to no longer support Doug Peterson, he gave it to them. I mean, they probably didn't need this to happen for that to be the case. But if they needed a reason to say, you know what, I'm done with bro, man. I ain't got nothing else for him. You just provided it for him, bro. You just gave any and everybody who has been a Doug Peterson hater the reason to say, yeah, see, you also gave it to Trent Baalke to go, that's why the team is soft. It ain't because of us, it's because of him. You have to understand at this point, and I know Doug isn't going to not be himself because we want him to not give Trent Baalke an exit ramp for a safe landing. That's not what he's going to do. But you can't tell me that it doesn't bother you a little bit that he didn't take a different approach. I tell you what, I wonder if it bothers the players. I guess at some point today, we'll find out when questions start getting asked. Seems like to me the players were pretty adamant afterwards, hey, this is what we do and we ain't going to stand for it. Players show more passion than the coach. And is that a problem? We'll talk about it more here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by iShaker. That's right, man. Listen up. If you like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete, well, that's the case. I've got the perfect gift for you, the passionate sports fan in your life. Perhaps you've heard of iShaker. iShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and Major League Baseball, and will make a great gift idea. Created and used by the Gronkowski brothers, Ice Shakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift you've been looking for. Go to iceshaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% off of your order. Now listen, order your team-branded bottles today at iceshaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. Ice Shakers, show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. Ice Shakers at iceshaker.com. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by BetterHelp. Man, in the holiday season, I know There are some people that are alone. And they're alone sometimes because they can't seem to get themselves back on track. Maybe lost a loved one, or maybe uh, for a number of reasons, pain management or just time management, man. You feel guilty about not being able to spend time with the people that you want to. Well, if you're considering therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp has helped me through a number of situations similar to the ones I just mentioned. And if you're thinking about starting therapy today, there's no better place than BetterHelp. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/locked on today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars. Where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. The Jags obviously lose yesterday 23-20, therefore eliminating themselves with that loss to the Houston Texans. They have eliminated themselves out of the playoffs. A lot of fallout about the hit that Trevor Lawrence took yesterday. I will say this, though, before we get back on that. Valiant effort by the coaches and the players for rolling up their sleeves, man, and having to make an adjustment and try to run the ball and control the clock. I thought they did a real good job of they looked better yesterday in some situations, man, than they have all year when it came in terms of first and second down play calls and their ability to do things that Houston didn't want them to do. And also Walker Little. Shout out to Walker Little, man. He got his money, got his contract extension. You didn't hear his name, called over and over again yesterday against a couple of guys who are really, really, really good pass rushers in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. So if there was any, I guess you could say, proof that the Jaguars did what they should have done and were supposed to do, I don't know if you can blame it on play calling or whatever, but there were 0 sacks. 0 sacks by the Jags, and for the Jags, Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker both got into the action and at least affected the quarterback on the other side of the ball. So a lot of things went right. And this is the thing with the Jaguars. When you wonder how could they lose 15 of their last 18, is because they still didn't win. And when you still don't win, you still have to go back and try to find these common denominators as to why they can't seem to transfer the things that they do in practice to the real games. Well, not overanalyzing it or psycho-evaluating anything, but you think that has something to do with mental toughness, right? So there are times when you can either connect the dots correctly or incorrectly of instances where the leadership doesn't have an approach that is tough, and then try to say, well, maybe that's what it is. But at this point in the administration, you're kind of grasping for straws to try to figure that out. That's why I want to start over with everything, right? It just seems like the players were more upset about the incidents yesterday than Doug Peterson was. Now, I'm not glossing over the fact that as the coach and as the quote unquote leader and adult in the room, Doug can't blow his top and act just like a player. I get it. I'm not talking about how he acted. That's like talking about a thumbnail of a YouTube video as opposed to what's actually in the video. I'm not talking about his reaction. I'm not talking about body language or what he did. I'm talking about what he said after the fact. There was two totally different things, and sometimes we get things confused. Nobody wanted to see Doug act all ghetto. I ain't wanted to see him go world star on the sideline because that doesn't look good either, although it might have been justified. I did expect him to spend more time talking about his own guys that were hurt and spend more time talking about how he more understood Jarian Jones's reaction. I'm expecting him to do that more than I thought, he would talk about how good of a coach DeMeco Ryans is and how he would just be opening the door for the league to come in and issue suspensions or fines. That kind of bothers me. That's not what you're supposed to be worried about, homeboy. You're supposed to be worried about your own people. So now I have to wonder, if that softness, and that's what it is in my opinion, if that softness is there with this entire football team, because that's what you do when you lose. What you do when you lose is you sit here and speculate and you try to figure it out. And when you try to you're really trying to figure it out, believe it or not, you're not trying to blame anybody. What you're trying to do is put your finger on it because you just want to understand it. And you want to help those people understand. Man, maybe y'all are mentally soft because your leadership is mentally soft. And maybe the soft mentality, it could come from a lot of things. It could come from not getting what you want in personnel and being in an environment where you've already conceded that you're going to get blamed for everything anyway, even though it's not your fault because nobody will listen to you. Look, I get it. But whatever it is, the fans are the ones that are paying for it. Trevor Lawrence paying for it right now, probably with a real bad headache. Man, it's just every time they seem to do something right as an organization, like on the day that Walker Little's contract extension is signed, he goes out and he shuts down two of the best pass rushers in the league. On the day that they could be peacocking about something like that, something like this is what we're talking about. And that's the Jaguars as a whole. Now, I know everyone's going to talk about Trent Baalke. Let me explain something. Is it good that Trent re-signed Walker Little, no matter how weird it is that Walker Little got a contract extension? He has never really been a full-time starter. They never believed in him enough to not pay another guy who wasn't really that good $17, $18 million a year. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good they re-signed him. Is it good that they re-signed Tyson Campbell? Yep. Is it good that they re-signed Trevor Lawrence? Yeah. Those are things that Trent Baalke can walk right in and say, these are the dudes that I picked and these are the guys that I re-signed. I re-signed Foye Oluokun too. I drafted Trayvon Walker, and Trayvon Walker is doing well. And then shout out to Steve Walker, who was acknowledged that as the veteran of the day yesterday. We always joke with Steve and say that I'm a vet and you're a vet. He says, no, you're a vet. I'm a Marine. So shout out to Steve Walker and Lasagna and their entire family. That's Trayvon's father. We appreciate his service. But you can go in and cherry pick all of those things. And you can say, we got to get to the point where we're drafting re-sign guy. And that's what I just did. I just re-signed everybody. I re-signed the players. We got these young group of players, right? These are the guys that I drafted or signed in free agency that have really, really worked out for this team. And I think we're going to be okay. Anton Harrison looks like he's going to be a good player. Trayvon Walker is going to be one of the highest paid players in the league in a year or a year and a half. We got Josh Allen, who's a character guy, back in the fold. We really, really got a good core nucleus of players. And if I'm Shah Khan, I look right back at him and say, all right, so why are we picking first again in the draft if the draft was tomorrow? You got all of that stuff. You 4 years ago, you signed all of these, you drafted these guys, you re-signed a whole bunch of them. You just told me how many of them are playing well. You just told me how good all of them are and how they deserve their money. And of the three players you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence was with an extension, Walker Little with an extension, Tyson Campbell with an extension. Answer this for me. How many of those that if you put it in a court of football opinion are people still unknown or sit here guessing about? The Jaguars are banking that these dudes turn out to be as good as they think they are. That to me is a problem when you extend guys and you still have questions about them while other teams are extending guys they ain't got one lick of a question about. That's why Trent Baalke shouldn't be here. Going through this without acknowledging the fact that if the season ends today, they're picking first, which is exactly where they were in 2020 when they picked first and they re-signed all of those guys or a lot of those dudes from that draft have now gotten second contracts and they're still picking first. That's the reason he shouldn't be here. Thank you for the ride, but we're right back where we were. Probably not in any worse shape than we were, but we went somewhere, but we weren't allowed to get off the roller coaster, and they just brought us back to this point. We saw it. Hey, playoffs, how you doing? And they let us off. They said, no, you can't get off. You can't stay over there. You can just look at it. But now you got to come back to where you were in 2020. Should they shut down Trevor Lawrence for the rest of the year? We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action for the rest of the season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. You are never too late to get tickets to any event, whether it's sports or not. All you got to do is download the Game Time app and you'll have that ticket availability right in your hand, baby, because they do not worry about you being late. They have all-in pricing, seat views, and a ticket curation process that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. That is LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. Rolling along here, segment 3 on a Monday on Locked On Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence took a big hit yesterday in a game where he was trying to, there was still a possibility that the Jaguars could make the playoffs. Didn't happen. They're not going to make the playoffs. Obviously, they fall to 2-10. In fact, they have the first pick in the draft right now. If the season were to end today, they'd be picking first, even though they have the same record as both the Raiders and Giants. The Jaguars 2-10 is considered worse because of their strength of schedule. As an exercise, they have been the worst team in the National Football League. Are they the worst team in the league? I don't think so. But, I mean, the fact that we have to have this conversation and this discussion tells you, for me, that it's not the fault of just one person. It's all of it. And Trevor Lawrence has now gotten banged up. He came into the game possibly needing surgery on his non-throwing shoulder. I think he was trying to figure out if he could play through it. And then he got hit with this dirty hit yesterday, and now he went to concussion protocol and left the game. There's no reason to play him for the rest of the season. Whether he needs the surgery or not, there's nothing for him to prove this year, just to try to break this out. I just leave him on the sideline and let him rehab and let him figure out the schedule for surgery. Whatever we have to do, we need Trevor Lawrence come around April or May to be back, learning a new playbook, hopefully, and getting going with a full offseason to rest and get himself together, as opposed to putting him back out there in these meaningless games and it gives you a better chance to win those games, but not at the expense of hurting him in the future. So, in my opinion, he should be shut down. They should absolutely just shut him down. And if the league has something to say about it, oh well. He might need surgery. The fact that he might need surgery tells you at the very least he needs rest, right? So what I would do is I would shut him down. I'd shut him down if I was the Jaguars. And if I'm Shahir Khan, I make sure that there's an edict that he is shut down for the rest of the year, because it makes no sense for him to continue to play for the rest of this season at all. And if I see him again out there, I'll think that somebody done lost their damn mind and they have no clue as to what they're doing. This really needs to be a situation where they don't play him anymore for the rest of the season. He is banged up. He took a vicious hit. Just the concussion, just the stiffness in his arms the other day says that he shouldn't even be thought about. They shouldn't even think about playing him this week at all. And for me, I'd shut him down for the rest of the season. I want to really hear from some people over there to tell me. I want to hear the differences between now that everyone's had a chance to sit and talk in private. If there's some sort of talking point messages between the players and the coaches, I really want to hear how, if pressed, someone says that, there was a noticeable difference in the response of Doug Peterson and how the players responded. I wonder if it's going to pick up steam that people going to pay, if anybody's going to pay Jarian Jones his fine if he gets one. The one that Doug Peterson talked about that really didn't exist yet. And he started talking it and speaking it into existence, which is another thing that got on my nerves yesterday. All of that. So I'm really, really, really interested in how it sounds moving forward, how the players respond, how their body language is when they're on the field. If this leads to some sort of groundswell of everyone being angry enough that they cut Doug Peterson loose a little bit early. I wonder how much the Bears' decision to get rid of their coach and what their talking points are about the kind of environment that they want a leader of men type coach, if that affects what the Jaguars do. And that's where we're going to park it there tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll park it at, if the Bears situation or the situation around the league for anybody else, and the Bears are the ones that have made the decision, if that affects Jacksonville and it doesn't make them want to doesn't make them want to push, does it make Jacksonville want to push forward and go ahead and try to start moving along with their process so they get their guy? Because it sounds like the Bears have an idea of exactly who they want. And I'm really wondering if that's the same thing the Jaguars want, or if if there's no decisions being made because there ain't nobody over there to make the decision yet. And that would be good news for Jacksonville. If ain't nobody over there to make the decision and no decision has been made at this point, like if they get rid of the coach, then that means that it was an edict or a directive from Shahir through Baalke. And that would it wouldn't necessarily signal that Baalke is safe, but combined with the fact that Baalke is out here giving people contract extensions, it might signal that. If they don't do anything at all, that tells me that I think everybody's going to be gone. Or they could do it and then promote someone from within and they could take the assistant GM and call him the interim so that everyone knows that the job is open. Very interesting things to pay attention to down the stretch here on Locked On Jaguars. Tap into Locked On NFL twice a day. The madman Tyler Rowland will give you everything you want early in the morning, man, to slap you upside your head like a shot of espresso, and then I'll slide through in the barbershop and finish it up from there with you and give you all the biggest stories with the use of local experts that know your teams like no one else. Make sure you check that out. All right, man, we're going to talk about this coaching situation tomorrow with the Jaguars, and if the Bears' action or lack of action has anything to do with Shad Khan thinking about doing something here. We'll talk about that and more. Take care of each other, and we'll see you tomorrow.